Hi there. Welcome to Creation Station Monthly. I'm Bob from Creation Station. This is our monthly show where we talk to two, I managed to get three this time because they are so fun, people about something they're passionate about. And today we're talking about Indigenous artists, and we are going to have a really fun time with this. We have three artists from scattered around the continent and not even in the United States. We're all over the place. And we're going to talk about what goes on and why and everything there is to know about it. Tara, could you kick us off and tell us who you are and tell us what Indigenous art is in the first place?
Sure, for sure. Thanks so much for having me. My name is Tara Chadwick, or Bosch King Wabagwan, and I am actually coming to you live from the northwest section of Fort Lauderdale today.
You're supposed to be up north.
I am home today, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful Florida winter weather at the moment. But I am Maya, Ashika, English, and also African. And for me, Indigenous art is it's all of the world's art in a way for me. You know, when we think about, like, for me, I think about my, early anthropology classes and the cave paintings in France and the Stonehenge constructions. And of course, my ancestral cities in Mesoamerica. And that is, for me, all Indigenous art. And all of us are connected, to our roots. Right now, I serve as the chief curator at the City of Toronto, and part of that responsibility is looking after, 1 million archaeological artifacts that are part of the repertoire of Indigenous art that lies beneath, all of our cities here, at least on this continent, here in Fort Lauderdale, all along the river and all along the coast, there is Indigenous art still, beneath our feet. But there's also lots of Indigenous artists who are alive today and continuing that tradition.
There we go. Jay, that's your cue. Take it away.
I'm Jay. I'm from the Fireweed clan. I'm with Suitan. So I come from up in northern British Columbia. That's my homeland area, I guess. I'm coming to you live from the Pacific Northwest down in the Vancouver area. And I am a freelance artist primarily. I have been studying with Suitan formline artwork under my family members going on. Man, I think it's been almost 4 years. I think I'm coming up on 4 years now. It's been quite a while. And yeah, Indigenous art to me, I guess, is just, to me, it's artwork created by an Indigenous person. Maybe that's a bit too literal, but that's I guess how I see it is if an Indigenous person made it and says, "Hey, this is my artwork. I made this while Indigenous." That's Indigenous art.
We're going to make that happen. Tzipporah, tell us. Tell us about yourself.
My name is Tzipporah. I'm a beater and an artist, as you can see in my header. As you can see, this is my website that's being pulled up right now. I've been running chucklehead.com for 2.5 years, just about. I started this brand to commemorate the ivory-billed woodpecker, known as the chuckala in Muskogee. The ivory-billed woodpecker is actually an extinct bird, and I wanted to highlight how the removal of Indigenous people from our ancestral lands affected the ecosystem and these animals that are very important to our cultures. So it's not just the Muskogee. I, of course, can't speak for any other nations, but I think that's very important. And I think Indigenous art is all about storytelling and all about telling Indigenous stories and empowering Indigenous people to be creative and make a living for themselves. And yeah, I mean, I think everyone should be an artist, but I think it's especially important for Indigenous people to be artists and to tell our stories and express ourselves.
Thanks. That is excellent. See, this is going to be a good show, everyone. Um, my only connection to Indigenous, I mean, I don't have any family, direct blood family, but my uncle and his grandfather was the chief medicine man for a tribe in Michigan at a time when they couldn't accept money. So when we were doing things with them, we would take over barter. I remember him getting a camera and things for stuff for doing. So it was fun growing up. And I just always thought, well, this is just what it's supposed to be. People are just supposed to share and do. So that's my first question to you guys. And just pick up on each other as you feel. What is it that made you feel like you're creative, I can do this art, and chose this path to highlight it instead of going out and being a dancer or going out and doing whatever else that you felt as being creative and doing? Tzipporah, you had already started on that. Let's finish that thought for you.
I
Why
think
beads?
I think there's something so magical about it, to be honest with you. I have dabbled in so many creative fields over the course of my life. I have danced, I have acted, I have drawn and written and done all the things. But this was a way that I could dedicate myself to my art and keep building on it and building on my skills. And getting really good at one thing has transformed my creative confidence to believe in myself that I am able to excel at other art fields. So it was really that like spark for me to where I really found my creative road, you know?
Jay, tell me, Jay.
So I first started studying form line artwork in, I think it was 2021. I was still in high school at the time, and I had to do an assignment for a history studies class, and was given a pretty free rein for what I could do for the project, and one of the options was make a visual piece or like a drawing of some kind. I've always been pretty creative. I've like as a young kid, I've like looked at a few different career paths, and I've looked at stuff like being a swimmer or being a veterinarian, that sort of thing. But one like hobby that always stuck with me as a young kid was just drawing. I really enjoyed drawing. One of the first few books I read was actually Calvin and Hobbes by Bill Watterson. My parents had a few different comics in our house, like Tintin and Calvin and Hobbes, and so I spent a lot of time reading those comics.
That's cool.
Trying to replicate the comic style.
Huh?
And so being just an artist and being creative has always stuck with me as a kid. And so I chose to do an art piece for this history project. And so I chose the subject of decolonization and the indigenous reclamation.
Yeah.
Am I wrong? And so I have several of my family members have studied form line artwork and practiced it. And so I was aware of the art style through them, but I'd never drawn it before myself. And so I made sort of an attempt at replicating it in the project. And my teacher was really impressed. She really liked the piece. And I showed it to my family, and they said, "Oh, well, you've got a couple of families who are really well versed in like drawing this and like the language of the art form. So why don't you ask one of them to like mentor you in the style?" And so I ended up getting in touch with my aunt, who she does not draw the style herself normally, but she and her husband ran an art gallery for a very, very long time, focused on supporting and portraying Indigenous artwork, specifically form line, Gaelic, Haida artwork, and so she was really knowledgeable about different the patterns and styles between nations, and so I started studying it under her guidance, and that's sort of how it basically evolved. My style has evolved. Is
That's cool.
her and experimenting.
That sounds really cool. Tara, tell us about. I'm going to throw up also because you're an expert here who can fill us in, because not just anyone can make and do art. Tell us the difference in between appropriation and how you can honor your heritage like this without someone like me appropriating something wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and it's so lovely to be in this conversation together with all of you and hearing. I love hearing your story, Jay, about how you've come to the work that you're doing, and same with you, Tzipporah. I, like you guys, I started off with my mom and with my sister later on, just being, like you originally, I think you were asking, when did you start getting interested in being creative? And I really had to think about that for a minute, because I'm like, well, art has always been, part of our life. And I realized that my first memory of my favorite art form was actually picking up a stick every day and playing it along the fence when I was walking to school with my mother. Like that creativity of being connected with, or even, going to the creek and making a pretend beaver dam with my dad, those are the things, those are the creative things that really have, been at the core. I think even making cooking fires, with my mother, those are the things that are the core of the creativity for me. And I think those are also things that every kid needs, things like that, like being connected, understanding where you are, wherever you live on the earth, forming that identity, that relationship with the land that you're on, and, understanding what we can of the history. It's an ongoing process to learn about who we are and who the people that came before us are, and, the people who have taken care of the land where we are. It's, even our own family genealogy, those are all important things. And those are all things that have driven me into the, the role that I'm in today. Like, in a way, I'm kind of been really stubborn at, learning and, wanting to follow a certain path, even if I don't know what the path is, just trying to stay focused on what is it my responsibility to learn? How can I acquire that knowledge? And, with me, it was really listening to my my mom's grandmother and her sister, who would recount our family, family history every holiday. Just, they had it all in their heads, everybody's grandmother, where they were born, what their names were, who their kids were. And I don't have that all in my head, but I have a little piece of it. I have a little thread of those 7 generations that I could still remember. But for the question that you asked, who can do art? Everyone can do art about their family. Everyone can do research about their family. Everyone can build an identity with the land that they're on and use their family tools, their genealogical tools and forms and traditions. However, like as you mentioned briefly on the screen there have been a number of legislations, international as well as national, that have been put in place to protect our history, to protect our cultural property, to protect our cultural heritage. And that actually the first one that I can think of like that was actually the Hague Convention after World War II that prohibited buying and selling of looted or stolen artifacts, art and artifacts. That was 1959. And then the next one, the next significant piece of legislation that I've had to work with several times is the 1971 UNESCO Antiquities Law. And, there's several in various countries that followed that, but that prevents this buying and selling of artifacts. And then again, another strengthening happened in 1994. There were 2 that year. There was this Indian Arts and Crafts Act that you mentioned, and there was also the Native American the NAGPRA Graves and Repatriation Act, which said that any items that have ties to specific federally recognized United States tribes that were in the possession of any cultural institutions needed to be identified and returned. And that process is still going on today. And the American Indian Arts and Crafts Act says that no one can sell, that can create or sell Native American art within the United States unless they are a member of a federally recognized tribe.
Okay, cool.
And all of those legislations are efforts towards creating an environment in which our art, our culture, our cultural knowledge, our intellectual knowledge is respected. And none of them are perfect. Like there's definitely people who are members of unfederally recognized tribes or state recognized tribes, or people who are not tribal members at all, but are descendants of, of tribes that, are just as, that are indigenous, but they may not be federally recognized tribal members. And so, there's pluses and minuses, and it's all a work in progress. It's all part of an effort for us to also reclaim what is left of our knowledge and to make it, bright for the future, to renew it, to, look at things in new ways. So, there's not too many people that are still making shell and clay beads. There's a few, but there's a lot more people who are using, glass beads, for example.
Tzipporah, what kind do you use?
I always use glass beads. Glass beads are the standard in beadwork now.
Yeah.
The reality of the situation is, as much as colonization has harmed indigenous people, one of the good things that we got out of it was glass beads. Glass beads, generally from Japan, are considered the standard, and almost every single beadworker I know uses primarily glass beads. I think glass is such a beautiful material to work with. It has this like cool feel to it. It reflects light really beautifully, and you can make these really, really tiny beads, really intricate designs. And I do think it would be cool to like learn how to make clay beads or shell beads. That would be so much fun. But I will never stop using glass beads. Let me tell you that. And I want to like comment on what you said before about like everyone can do art, but Native Americans are the only ones who are allowed to sell Native American art. Obviously, art
fill
in
me in about
general.
that. Fill me in on that,
Obviously,
Tzipporah, because
art in general,
anybody
and even
can make
beadwork.
but
Anyone can bead, but
right.
not anyone can say, "I'm Native and this is my native art."
Okay.
It's
Now,
not legal.
how does it feel? Maybe it's not legal or is it? I'm debating whether this line is legal or ethical. If
It's
someone
both.
no, but I mean,
Yeah.
if someone were to go make a bookmark and using an indigenous design and not selling it and not claiming to be indigenous, but just using the designs to make their art and sell it, where does that line go for you three? How does that fit in?
I think the line is between inspiration and copying. So
Okay.
if I look at your design and I'm like, wow, I could see how this might be inspired by Native American art. That's okay. As long as you're not claiming to be Native, you're just taking something, some aspect of art. That's what all art is.
Yeah.
All art is we look at each other, we look at each other's accomplishments and each other's art, and we draw something from it and put it into our own art. But if I look at it and I'm like, oh, that is Native art, you are clearly emulating a certain style that belongs to a certain nation. I can't even do that to other nations. And I'm Native, but I'm Muskogee.
Okay.
I can't go steal art styles from
a Seminole
some
for
other
a South Florida, yeah.
some other Native nation because I don't belong to that Native nation. Exactly. Exactly. And I wouldn't steal, designs from a clan that I'm not a part of. I wouldn't steal designs from another artist. Just generally, you have to be respectful of other people and other nations, and you have to get permission and you have to ask that person who designed that art piece, that nation whose style that belongs to. You can't just assume that it's okay to snatch that for yourself. And I think the big thing about colonization, and I've heard this about the repatriation issue as well, is, basically white people saying, how dare they like take their things back? Like, why do you think you're entitled to everything? Like, just be respectful and just recognize their art is their art, and you can draw something from it but not copy it and not claim to be Native if you aren't. So sorry if that was a little bit rambling.
No,
this is
that's
a topic
good.
I feel very strongly about.
That's why we're doing this here today. By the way, one of the reasons we're doing this is we have a big Artlit festival coming up in early January. We're featuring Native art and Native crafts and things like that from local tribes. So it's part of all the cool stuff that we're doing. Jay, I want to ask you about this because you do all your stuff digital. And it's not like there's ever any problem with people stealing digital art or stuff and doing, and what the heck? How do you take care of that?
So a lot of, in terms of like protecting my artwork, I am like, when it comes specifically to like generative AI, I'm aware like in this, there's a lot more staff running around. We recently artwork. You see a lot of big companies basically ripping artwork from artists without permission. And because generative AI at the moment is in a really weird place legally, although I know that there's progress being made, some laws are being passed that like written consent or compensation must be given to the artists and writers whose work has been used for these databases. As an artist online, are people stealing artwork, whether for AI or just posting it without credit or using it, you know, on a shirt on like a place like Redbubble. That's always been a thing. Um, Thankfully, as far as I know, I haven't had to deal with it. Maybe just because my audience isn't big enough. Generally, you see that happen a lot with, you know, creatives who have amassed audiences in the hundreds of thousands. It's very easy for it to happen with them. But in terms of protection, I always add my like a watermark or a signature at the bottom or somewhere in my piece when I post it publicly. And I use a system called Nightshade specifically to the AI that is supposed to basically make it a lot more difficult for
Yeah.
a database that's scraping my artwork to take it. And so that's my main to protecting it. There's some other ones too, like posting lower resolution images. It makes it a bit harder for, you know, scrapers who are trying to sell T-shirts or stickers en masse to use low resolution, because then it makes it a lot more obvious that it's a fake or a copy.
That's
But yeah,
a good thing. Yeah.
going back to the last two
Yeah. Tell us.
conversations. I believe when you were talking about like the history and repatriation, I think you were talking mostly about like history revolving around the United States. I just wanted to bring up a little bit revolving around the history of Canada. So Canada
Yeah.
had Indian Act in place for a very long time until the 1950s. And one of the aspects of the Indian Act that got adjusted and amended many times throughout its history was a law that banned potlatch. And so potlatch in this definition was actually wasn't a universal word within the indigenous nation. Fortunately, I'm blanking on where the word originates off the top of my head, but essentially it was from one specific nation, and it was used, you know, to describe feasts. And potluck is different than potlatch, actually.
Yep.
Um, And but the government at the time used potlatch as like a catch-all term for essentially in any sort of indigenous celebration or dance. Dance specifically was brought up a lot. So like feasts and gatherings that that revolved around indigenous culture, they were participating in one was an arrestable offense in Canada for a very long time. And the main motivator, of course, behind this sort of law was that it would be easier for the government to assimilate indigenous people into proper society if they were more disconnected from their culture. And so you had a lot of indigenous events and festivals basically going underground. So the event disguised during other holidays like Thanksgiving or Christmas. And in terms of artifacts specifically, because you know, gatherings and dances typically were banned, one of the things the government would oftentimes do would be confiscate all of the regalia and drums and clothing involved within the celebration to make it harder for the indigenous people to practice it. One man, Father Maurice, he was the priest of Whitstad, which used to be named Morristown after him. He recalls at one point in his journal that in order to try and make some of the indigenous people within his community assimilate, he made them gather all of their drums and burn them in a huge bonfire. In terms of reclamation especially, part of the reason why the preservation of indigenous culture and specifically around like laws preventing people from selling artifacts or from claiming Indigenous art not made by an Indigenous person as like Indigenous is it comes from both a legal and also a cultural standpoint. So you have when you have this history of Indigenous people being actively punished for practicing their culture, while the colonizers and settlers were allowed to, collect it and put it up on display. And actually, one I think it was in Thunder Bay, one large that got broken. The local priest took took a bunch of the regalia that was confiscated from the event and put it up for display in the local church and charged people to come and see it like it was an exhibit. And so I think that sort of demonstrates why those sort of laws have been introduced, because the history of North America and of other continents shows.
Miss Tara, I think the kids know what they're doing, huh?
Shows that oftentimes Indigenous populations they're like banned and punished for exploring and demonstrating their culture, while the colonizing entity on the continent gets to benefit from it. And so in terms of cultural appropriation versus appreciation specifically, it's something that it's hard to really, I guess, tell what someone who is committing appropriation is really thinking, because oftentimes you will hear a non-native person wearing a fake chieftain's headdress going, oh, but I'm honoring you guys. Or you'll see someone trying to sell beadwork that they claim is Indigenous. Or I've seen AI generated formline artwork online before, and a lot of it is a lot of the excuse that I hear is, well, I'm trying to show appreciation for this nation or Indigenous people in general, and it's I guess it's more of like an ethical concern of, I don't think you really understand what appreciation is in this context. Like, you're profiting from claiming or copying an Indigenous culture which already has a history of being exploited by the colonizing entity. And I think the main line that I draw is if you're profiting from it in some way. Like, if you're using it as a logo, if you're not Indigenous and you like steal a piece of a design, or you make a really close to form line design and you claim like, oh, or you use like, Indigenous terminology or whatnot for part of your brand identity or, your social media identity, that I think, I don't think that falls into appreciation anymore. You're trying to make it a part of your corporate or commercial identity, and that falls under appropriation. That was a little long.
That's, you guys are doing seriously.
It's a really important distinction, and especially for you, Bob, as you close out your career with Broward County during Art Lit, focused on, I think, is this the year that you guys are going to be giving away Seed Keeper by Diane Wilson? Okay, very cool. So, and this is not the first time that you guys have focused. I remember a few years ago, I did during COVID, we had a live show with the library focusing on Indigenous artists, because the book at that time was Joy Harjo's recent work. I can't remember what it was called though, but I think it might be American Sunrise, but it was a book of poetry. Anyways, we did have a couple of seminal artists that came on that time and, talked a little bit about, their perspectives. And my job is really always to try to create spaces for people's voices, right? Like, my voice is just one voice, but everybody's voice is important. And so, there are so many Native artists, Indigenous artists, and each one of us, no matter which continent we're from, we are all connected to such a rich and beautiful history, visually, musically, spiritually. And so, my advice to you is don't make the bookmark. However, do employ or contract with Native artists and, let them share whatever they're willing to, like, for example, the last time I was on that blog or webinar or live stream with Dante Blaze Billy and I think it was Iretta Tiger who were on with us. They each chose to share elements of their work, weaving and forms, like it was Iretta was doing a paper folding form that was related to the things that you would see in patchwork. And so, Dante did also last summer, maybe the summer before, actually her sister Tia Blaze Billy did it with her at the Apple store. They did a workshop about seminal patchwork. And so, there's some things that they chose to share, and that's up to them, whatever they want to share. And allow people to share. But me, like, I would never share any seminal patchwork. I wouldn't even share any Maya designs apart from what I might choose to wear one day. But it's, it's really it's all about listening. And as these ladies who are with us right now have been saying, like, it's about respect, and it's about not assuming that that we have the right to share anything. Like don't make the bookmark, Bob. Just say no. Tell them.
I'm hiring Tzipporah for it. I'm going to hire Tzipporah.
Okay. Good, perfect. Then she can share. She can share whatever she wants.
I believe in hiring artists. You look at my website.
Yes.
It's all human art on stuff. Yeah, that we've been able to do. And that does what, as Jay's getting all organized with his feed here for a second. Tzipporah, I want to come back. We're a technology podcast also. So tell me about what are the tools you're using and what kind of stuff are you doing now versus what would be traditional?
So as for traditional or the tools I'm using now, obviously a lot of the tools that I use are modern tools. And I use the internet. Let's be so for real. One of the biggest tools that I use is the internet. And I think one of your questions that you had sent me earlier, not to like jump the conversation, but like you had asked, sorry, my brain is blanking right now.
What the technology
tools,
is that you want?
Technology, equipment.
Yeah.
And the ideal.
You had asked what is it that I've made that I'm most proud of? Mm-hmm. And I would say that it's my online presence, my website, my social media platform that I've built. And that is like the biggest tool that I have for myself, is to be able to get myself out there. And that's something that I'm very privileged to have. Not everybody, has that. And it has just enabled me to do this and to support myself with this work. And I'm very, very grateful for that. I'm very, very grateful for that. As for other tools, Hold on.
Go,
one
Jay.
second.
Yep, Jay, go for it. Oh, what
This,
she got?
this beautiful bead mat. Okay.
Okay, nice. See,
And
I like these things. I like that stuff. Jake, tell us.
I definitely agree with Tzipporah. Although I wouldn't say that I guess my online presence is I guess it's not this it's not my I guess the thing that I've created that I'm most proud of. I wouldn't quantify that as the thing I'm most proud of, but I definitely say that in terms of like being a tool and a resource, it is definitely one of the most important. And I've definitely, because I've been on the internet for a long time, long enough to like see the way that the online I don't know what to call it, the online, I guess, just world has evolved and changed over the course of, I don't know, 10 years or so. And it's definitely, as if you're an artist trying to be creative online and try to like make a living, I guess, online in general, it is very hard. And
Yeah.
just coming off of Twitter, I ditched Twitter entirely in 2024-ish for Blue Sky, and it was definitely challenging because when you're trying to build a presence online, a lot of the times on any website in general, you will be subject to an algorithm of some kind. And when you're just starting out, it can be difficult to build an audience of any kind because, you know, you're coming off of just mentioning Twitter again. Twitter at the time that I left it in about 2024, it had some really punishing algorithm choices for artists specifically. Like if you use too many hashtags, the I guess the auto moderation of the website might think that your account is a bot of some kind. Or if you use too many images, then you might get suspected of being a bot. And those are those two things are really essential for artists. And I haven't been on too many other platforms. I started an Instagram around September this year, and I'm also on Tumblr. And Tumblr, I know Tumblr, I think, is one of those websites that a lot of folks think is like dead or non-existent, but it's still trucking, and it's like it can be. I guess like social media tends to be one of those things that a lot of people think as a creative is one of the easier parts, and it is really really not, because it takes a while to build an audience, no matter like what kind of artwork you're doing.
You guys have found an audience. I found you guys all on Blue Sky, so hey, you guys are doing good.
I will have to get y'all's Blue Skies after this. Would you say you recommend using Tumblr to other artists who are making a living online?
It's really hard because the Tumblr, I guess, energy or just the experience is a little bit different compared to other social media sites. But I think compared to like a site like Twitter, it actually is a bit more artist friendly. Specifically, I really like the tagging system. That's one thing I really like about Tumblr. It has a really nice tagging system. So you can use a bunch of like hashtags for various subjects for your artwork, and those tags will go at the bottom of the post. And normally, if it has more than 4, then it'll be like under a read more, so it doesn't like entirely crowd your whole your whole post like a place like
That's
Instagram does. So into Tumblr, I won't pretend like Tumblr is a perfect website. That's another aspect of social media. There never really is a perfect website. You just got to work with what the media place gives you. But in terms of artists, Tumblr is really handy. I'd say. And I think it's worth like giving it a shot if you're an artist. Even if you just
I've thought about it before.
cool.
And I'm really glad to hear this from you because, I was always iffy about it. I wasn't sure if it was worth it. I was never big on Twitter, but back when I was on Twitter, before I also ditched it, I got barely any interaction on there. You are so right that Twitter just pushes artists down by so many ways that they do this. I've heard that they downrank posts that have links in them so that users just spend all their time on Twitter. God forbid someone clicks away from Twitter.
Mm-hmm. This was all rebranding too.
Yeah. Tara, tell us about what tools you were using.
Yeah, similarly, first I just got to say, similarly, I ditched Twitter. I think I do still have a Twitter account somewhere, but I don't, it's not on my phone. You asked us, what equipment did you start with? And has it changed over time? And so originally, I thought that I would talk more about my work as an artist, which I haven't done so far. And so I'll try to summarize, I talked about the sticks, playing with the sticks and, making the pretend beaver dams and all of that, doing fire hearth cooking with my mom. But, after that, the other thing that I've always loved to do is actually dance. And so, for me, my first equipment was my pretend whatever, plastic 45 record player that I got to play, Sugar Plum Fairy to every day and do my self-directed dance practice for 45 minutes every day. That was my first equipment. And then I was like, yeah, but then, then I went and, worked with Broward and Benassi for 2 years. And our main equipment was the fax machine because we had to send out flyers about ceremonies and gatherings to all of the communities, and each community had a designated fax receiver. So that was the second equipment. But now, now and always, I think I just use what's available, whatever's available. And right now, I almost do everything on my cell phone, from pictures to videos to research to, everything is on my cell phone pretty much, it's a little crazy, but it's also very convenient. One thing that I would like to do is learn how to work more with large screen graphics. I've seen such big screens. I remember I mentioned the Apple store. They have a giant screen. I don't know if they do in all their stores, but or even some people have really big videos, or if you go to a concert these days, sometimes you'll see people with giant video screens behind them. Sometimes when I do things like this, I'll put one of my artworks, as the sort of the background, but today I was too afraid that I would have wonky Wi-Fi. So I decided to go simple, but that's one thing that I would like to learn how to incorporate more, or, in more impactful ways, is how do we use, I feel like I'm the master of the small screen now. How do I use big screens? I did see a really cool Instagram post yesterday from another, artist that you guys probably all know named Jen Stark. And she had all the screens in Times Square, all showing her artwork all at once in the middle of the snowstorm. It looked amazing. Damn. Definitely look her up on Instagram. She's not an Indigenous artist, but I just was like, oh, that's how you use screens.
I don't think I'm getting on Times Square screens anytime soon.
No, we might. You just got to apply, that's the thing about the visual stuff. I really wasn't, I've taken pictures my whole life, but I just took them for myself, or, maybe for a museum exhibition or research or whatever. But, during COVID, I really missed connecting with people live, because that's always part of what I do, whether it's through, welcoming people to an exhibition, or doing a dance performance, or, teaching a class of, 5-year-olds, whatever it is, I'm always have a little bit of time with people.
You
And
just
I
led
didn't
me
have
to my
that.
next question, Tara.
I didn't have that in COVID. So I decided to, apply, take my favorite picture and apply. And so that's what I did. And sometimes you just got to try for something that you never thought you would be able to do.
Okay, and with that, here's my question for you, because we've already demonstrated, all three of you, excellent artists. You guys, I've shown some of your work, really nice stuff. I'm going to start with you, Tara. Tell me, what was it that you failed at that you learned from to grow and build and become better?
Oh gosh, you didn't tell us this question ahead of time. There's so many things that I failed at. There's so many things that I fail. Like, I actually fail at everything. And then I just keep on going. Like, I just, and even some of the times that I think that I'm, even there is no difference between when succeeding and failing. It's all just one part of, it's just all part of a cycle. You never know what people are going to like and what you're not going to like. Someone might tell you today, oh, you fail. And then you take the same thing to somewhere else and they're like, oh, that's so amazing. It's part of the, for me, it's just part of the same, failure and success is part of the same. There's a very embarrassing thing that happened last week. That I put,
nobody else is going to know. Don't worry, we'll keep up.
I did a video, but there was a glitch in the video. So there's like this, there's this like somewhere online somewhere, there's this video with this horrible, anyways, I'm going to try to fix that one. We'll see what happens. Well, just got to keep going.
Tzipporah, tell us, what did you do that you failed and learned from?
I have to agree with Tara here. I think failure is part of the process. I think that I have failed so many times at different things that none of them really stick out to me. I'm not like, oh, I really fucked up last year and it ruined my whole art career. Like, you make a bunch of small mistakes along the way. And hey, sometimes you have to scrap the piece and start over. It's just beads and thread. At the end of the day, not everything is going to sell. Not everything is going to be a hit. Not everything is going to go viral. Not everything is going to be profitable. But that's okay, because I either learned something from the process or I learned what doesn't work. That's helpful too. It's helpful to know what doesn't work.
Right.
And after a while, you learn to cope with failure and you learn to not let it stop you from continuing and from trying again and from succeeding later. It's genuinely part of the process. If you're scared of failing, just give up now. Like, you are going to make mistakes. Keep going. Push over the mistakes. It's part of it.
Yeah.
Tell us,
It's
Jay.
also in relation to social media, especially, like, as an artist trying to make a living online, it is one of the downsides of social media, besides, getting an audience going and working with the algorithm of whichever platform you use. One aspect that I definitely see a lot of young artists, any artists of any skill level, any age range, any medium, is that they base the quality or value of their artwork based on how well it does online. And when that's understandable, because when you're trying to make a living of some kind off of the internet, off of people seeing your artwork, or people seeing your artwork and then going to your shop and making a purchase from your shop, it's very, very easy to base your base the quality of your artwork, or how good of an artist you are, based off of how many likes it gets, or how many views it gets, or how much money you make from your shop. And it's an easy, like, mindset to fall into, and it's also a really unhealthy one, because a lot of artists, one of the reasons why we create art is because it's part of our creativity, part of what we want to do. And so it feels like when we're making art, we're like putting just a little bit of ourselves out into the world. And so when we maybe see that part of ourselves seemingly get rejected by not going viral online or not selling online, then it's really easy to just feel discouraged or feel like, oh, I've like failed as an artist. And I think especially nowadays, a lot of artists online are beginning to like try and disconnect a little bit, not entirely remove their presence, but like try and disconnect their, I guess, self-worth and value from how well their artwork does online. And it's difficult because if you're trying to make a living off of it, it's easier said than done. But it is like it is about finding a balance, I guess. That's a very common thing throughout all of life, finding like a balance between having a good audience in social media and being able to pay for your rent and whatnot with what you do online, while also not letting, perceived flops that you post to the internet, like destroy your creativity or your drive to make art. So, social media is always a double-edged sword, and it's about learning to handle it.
Tara, I'll give you the last word on that.
In terms of career building, I think I agree with both Jay and Tzipporah. Just keep doing it. Like I just encourage all artists, Native artists, but all artists, or people who don't even consider themselves artists yet, but the things that they do are creative. Like we really, in this day and age and time, our ability to think creatively is probably just as an important skill as learning how to feed ourselves from the earth. And so these basic skills, I think, and the creativity that comes through practicing any form of art, and the discipline to keep trying even through all those failures that are part of the process, are really, really important. And they're going to become even more important in this age where our brains are filled with AI and GPSs and, algorithms and all of those things. And so congratulations to both of you guys. It has really honestly been a pleasure getting to know you this hour. Thank you for bringing us together, Bob. I'm really, really inspired by both of you guys, your work, your approach, the things that you bring into your work that, otherwise you might not think about it by just, by seeing the beauty of your work, but all of the ideas that you're bringing into it and the process that you're following is really, really exciting. And I do hope that I get to connect with you guys on. I like Instagram. I don't really like social media that much, but I have become a little bit of a social media monster. I blame it on my younger sisters because they just wanted to see pictures of their nephews when they were little. So I had to learn it. But
and in the chat, there are links to all three of your sites and all of the easily accessible things for you. Again, thank you all. So we went through an hour so fast.
We did.
That was amazing. Let me add this in really quick here. Thank you everyone for doing this. This is the conclusion of season 5 for Creation Station Monthly. We have done 62 shows, including our bonus episodes. I dropped links to previous episodes as they were talking about dance and AI and everything. Go check them out. If there is anything you would like to pass on to the artists, creationstation@broward.org comes right to me. And we'll see you all around the internet. Have a great time, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.